Alright, let's settle this once and for all. Baldur's Gate, classic RPG, groundbreaking at the time. Who's with me?
Classic, sure, but groundbreaking. I don't know about that, Shepard. The combat was clunky, the interface was a mess. It hasn't aged well.
Yeah, the combat wasn't perfect, but the story, the characters, the choices, that's what made it legendary. You can't deny that.
I gotta side with Shepard on this one, Garrus. Baldur's Gate was a masterpiece. It laid the foundation for so many great RPGs that came after. The world building, the depth of the companions' backstories. Simply epic.
I've never been much of a fantasy guy, but I'll admit Baldur's Gate had its moments. The dialogue was sharp, and the party dynamics were interesting. But let's face it, it's not exactly my cup of tea.
That's the thing, Shepard. It's not that I hate Baldur's Gate, it's just that it doesn't hold up compared to modern RPGs. The clunky combat, the dated graphics, it feels like a chore to play these days.
You can't judge a game solely on its mechanics, Garrus. Baldur's Gate set the standard for storytelling in RPGs. It had complex characters, moral dilemmas, and consequences that affected the entire world. It was ahead of its time.
Shepard's right. The impact this game had on the genre is undeniable. It set the bar high, and for that it deserves respect. Sure, the combat may feel dated, but that doesn't negate its influence.
Influence, schmooze influence. Look, I get it. Baldur's Gate is a classic, but it's not without its flaws. If we're talking about tier lists, it's definitely not an S tier for me, maybe a solid B at best.
You've got to be kidding me, Joker. This game is a masterpiece, a legend. It's an A tier at the very least.
All right, calm down, you two. Let's agree to disagree on this one. Baldur's Gate had its merits, but it's not for everyone. Can we move on to the next game and put it in B?
Fine, but mark my words, Baldur's Gate will always be remembered as one of the greatest RPGs ever made.
We'll see about that. Let's move on, shall we?
Now, Baldur's Gate 2. This is where the series truly shined. The story took a darker turn, the companions evolved, and the stakes were higher. It's a masterpiece, plain and simple.
I can't argue with that, Shepard. Baldur's Gate 2 improved upon its predecessor in almost every way. The combat was more refined, the character development was outstanding, and the sheer scope of the game was mind-boggling.
Oh, hell yeah. Baldur's Gate 2 was an absolute blast. The amount of content it offered was staggering. And the villains. I still get chills thinking about John Irenicus, one of the best antagonists in gaming history.
All right, I'll admit Baldur's Gate 2 was a huge improvement over the first one. The writing was top-notch, the quests were engaging, and the interactions between the party members, priceless. I might even give this one an A tier.
Finally, we're on the same page, Joker. Baldur's Gate 2 is a true gem. It pushed the boundaries of storytelling in RPGs, making every decision feel weighty and impactful. The romances alone were enough to hook players for hours on end.
I do have one complaint, though. The sheer size of the game made it a bit overwhelming at times. Sometimes I found myself lost in side quests, unsure of the main story's progression. It required serious commitment to fully appreciate it.
But isn't that what makes it great? Baldur's Gate 2 rewarded dedication. It wasn't meant to be a casual experience. You had to invest time and effort to uncover its depth, and that's why it's a masterpiece.
You know, Rex, not everyone has all the time in the galaxy to dedicate to a single game. I appreciate the depth and all, but I still think it falls short of being an S tier. I'd give it a solid A.
Damn it, Joker. Are you incapable of recognizing greatness? Baldur's Gate 2 deserves nothing less than S tier. It's a pinnacle of storytelling, world building, and gameplay.
Shepard, calm down. We're entitled to our opinions, even if Joker's is clearly wrong. Let's just put it in S tier and leave it at that.
Neverwinter Nights, a classic from BioWare. It brought the Dungeons & Dragons universe to life like never before. The customization, the multiplayer, the modding scene, it was revolutionary.
Revolutionary? I'm not so sure, Shepard. Sure, it had its strengths, but it felt a bit generic to me. The story lacked the depth and emotional resonance of other BioWare games.
You've got a point, Garrus. Neverwinter Nights had its limitations, but it opened up a whole new world for players. The toolset allowed for incredible user-generated content, and the multiplayer experience was fantastic.
Neverwinter Nights. It was alright, I guess. Nothing really stood out to me. The gameplay was decent, but the story didn't grab me. I'd give it a solid C tier.
A C tier? Joker, you're seriously underestimating the impact of this game. It paved the way for countless RPG adventures and set a new standard for player creativity. It deserves at least a B tier.
I'm with Shepard on this one. Neverwinter Nights had its flaws, but it provided endless hours of enjoyment for so many players. The online communities and the persistent worlds created by fans were incredible.
I'll give it credit for the multiplayer aspect. It allowed players to forge their own destinies, connect with others, and immerse themselves in a vibrant world. I'd say it's a solid B tier.
Fine, B tier it is, but let's not pretend it was on the same level as Baldur's Gate or Mass Effect. It was good, just not great.
Joker, you just can't appreciate the beauty of variety, can you? Neverwinter Nights brought people together, inspired creativity, and gave us countless memorable adventures. It's a game that should be celebrated.
All right, Shepard, let's not let this game tear us apart. We have more titles to discuss, so let's move on. Neverwinter Nights, B tier it is.
Knights of the Old Republic, now we're talking. This game redefined the Star Wars universe and delivered one of the most memorable RPG experiences ever. It's a masterpiece, no doubt about it.
I have to agree with Shepard on this one. Knights of the Old Republic captured the essence of Star Wars perfectly. The story, the characters, the moral choices, it all blended together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Oh, I've got fond memories of this one. The Force powers, the lightsaber battles, it was like stepping into a galaxy far, far away. The twist, pure brilliance. Knights of the Old Republic deserves every accolade it gets.
I'll admit, Knights of the Old Republic was a solid game. The choices you made, the companions you interacted with, it had a depth that drew you in. But let's not forget the clunky combat and outdated graphics. It has its flaws.
Flaws? Sure, every game has its flaws, but the storytelling in Knights of the Old Republic, it was unmatched. The way it delved into the Force, the struggle between the light and dark side, it was captivating.
I won't deny its impact on the Star Wars universe and the RPG genre as a whole, but I have to agree with Joker on this. The combat mechanics were a bit clunky, and the graphics haven't aged well. It holds it back from reaching the S tier for me.
You two just don't appreciate the masterpiece that Knights of the Old Republic is. It's a solid S tier game, hands down. The combat, it served its purpose, and the graphics were impressive for its time. It's a legend.
Oh, Rex, don't be so sensitive. We can appreciate its impact without ignoring its flaws. Knights of the Old Republic belongs in the A tier for me. It's a great game, just not perfect.
It deserves more than an A tier. It revolutionized the way we experience Star Wars in video games. The choices, the character development, the stunning twists. It's an S tier game in my book.
All right, let's find some middle ground here. Knights of the Old Republic is undeniably an excellent game, but it's not without its technical shortcomings. Let's settle for an A tier consensus.
Jade Empire, a hidden gem from BioWare. It took us on a journey through ancient Chinese mythology, exploring martial arts and morality. It's an underrated masterpiece, in my opinion.
I agree, Shepard. Jade Empire was a breath of fresh air, delving into a unique setting and blending it with BioWare's signature storytelling. The combat was fluid, the world was rich, and the characters were engaging.
Absolutely. Jade Empire had that sense of mysticism and adventure that drew me in. The diverse combat styles, the intricate plot, it all worked together to create a captivating experience. It deserves more recognition.
I hate to be the party pooper here, but Jade Empire didn't quite capture my interest. The setting was interesting, but the combat felt repetitive and the story failed to fully engage me. It's a solid B tier at best for me.
Come on, Joker, give it a chance. Jade Empire brought a fresh take on RPGs, exploring new cultural mythologies, and presenting players with meaningful choices. It deserves more credit than that.
I can understand where Joker is coming from. Jade Empire had its flaws, particularly with the combat mechanics and the pacing. It had the potential to be great, but it fell short in some areas. I'd place it in the A tier.
No way, Garrus. Jade Empire had its flaws, sure, but it was an innovative game that explored a unique setting. The depth of the lore and the impactful choices make it deserving of the S tier. It's a shame it often gets overlooked.
All right. We can't seem to agree on this one. I'll bump it up to a solid B tier, but I won't go any higher. It just didn't resonate with me as much as it did with you guys.
Jade Empire deserves better, but I guess we'll have to settle for a compromise. Let's put it in the A tier, acknowledging its strengths and weaknesses. It still stands as a unique and memorable RPG experience. Mass Effect, our very own space epic. This game changed the landscape of gaming. It allowed players to shape the destiny of the galaxy, build relationships, and tackle complex moral dilemmas. It's an S tier, without a doubt.
Shepard's right. Mass Effect set a new standard for storytelling in video games. The world building, the deep characters, the consequences of our actions, it all came together to create an unparalleled experience. It's an absolute masterpiece.
Hell yeah! Mass Effect is what brought us all together. It let us save the galaxy, make tough choices, and form bonds that will last a lifetime. I can't think of a game that deserves the S tier more than this one.
Finally, we're on the same page. Mass Effect was a groundbreaking series. The choices we made had real weight, and the way it continued our story across 3 games, incredible. S tier, no question.
See, Joker? You can recognize greatness when it's staring you in the face. Mass Effect revolutionized RPGs, blending sci-fi with compelling narratives. It created an emotional journey that resonates with players even today.
But let's not forget that it had its flaws. The Mako controls and the uneven pacing bring it down a notch. I'd place it in the A tier.
Flaws or not, Mass Effect is a legend. It redefined what an RPG could be, and the impact it had on gaming is immeasurable. The sheer scope of the game, the unforgettable characters, and the depth of its lore make it an S tier for me.
I understand your reservations, Garrus, but Mass Effect is more than the sum of its parts. It touched the hearts of millions of players, and that's what makes it deserving of the S tier. But I respect your opinion. Dragon Age Origins, a game that took the fantasy genre by storm. It delivered a deep, immersive world, rich lore, and complex characters. It's another masterpiece.
I couldn't agree more, Shepard. Dragon Age Origins brought a refreshing take on high fantasy, with its intricate political intrigue and morally challenging decisions. The companions were memorable, and the world building was exceptional.
Dragon Age Origins. I have to admit, it didn't captivate me as much as it did you guys. The combat felt clunky, and the story didn't quite grip me. It's a solid B tier for me.
Finally, someone speaks my language. Dragon Age Origins had potential, but it fell short in execution. The combat was repetitive, and the pacing was off at times. I'd give it a B tier as well.
Hold on a second. Dragon Age Origins is a deeply immersive experience. The choices we made, the alliances we forged, it all had consequences that shaped the world. The tactical combat added depth to the gameplay.
Shepard, I agree with you on the impact of our choices and the depth of the world, but I can't ignore the technical issues and the slow pacing in certain areas. It hampers the overall experience. I'd place it in the A tier.
I see your points, but I stand by my assessment. Dragon Age Origins had potential, but it failed to fully engage me. The combat could have been better, and the story left something to be desired. B tier is where it belongs for me.
Looks like we're on the same page, Rex. Dragon Age Origins was a good game, but it didn't blow me away. It had its moments, but it doesn't reach the upper tiers for me.
I guess I'll have to accept our differences on this one. Dragon Age Origins, for me, is an A-tier game that introduced us to a vast, immersive fantasy world. But I respect your opinions.
And we respect yours too, Shepard. We all have our own perspectives. Let's agree to place Dragon Age Origins in the B tier.
Mass Effect 2, a true masterpiece that took everything we loved about the first game and elevated it to new heights. The character development, the intense missions, the loyalty quests. It's an S-tier game, no doubt.
Shepard, you couldn't be more right. Mass Effect 2 was a turning point for the series. The improved combat, the loyalty missions that deepened our connections, it all contributed to an unforgettable experience. It's an S tier without question.
Damn straight. Mass Effect 2 raised the stakes, made us feel the weight of our decisions, and introduced us to some of the best characters in gaming. It's an S tier for sure, no doubt about it.
Finally, we're on the same page. Mass Effect 2 was a cinematic masterpiece. The suicide mission, pure brilliance. The refined gameplay, the character-focused storytelling, it all contributed to an exceptional gaming experience. S tier, no question.
I'm glad we're all in agreement. Mass Effect 2 brought the heat and delivered an unforgettable journey. The emotional impact of our choices, the stunning visuals, and the thrill of assembling the perfect team. It's a game that deserves the highest praise. Dragon Age 2, a game that took a different approach from its predecessor. While it had its flaws, I appreciate its focus on character-driven storytelling. I'd place it in the B tier.
Shepard, are we talking about the same game? Dragon Age 2 fell short in many areas. The repetitive environments, the lackluster plot. It's a C tier at best for me.
I have to side with Garrus on this one. Dragon Age 2 was a disappointment. It lacked the depth and world building of the first game. It's a C tier, no doubt about it.
You guys are finally seeing eye to eye with me. Dragon Age 2 had potential, but it felt rushed. The recycled environments and the simplified gameplay were major letdowns. C tier, definitely.
Hold on a second. Yes, Dragon Age 2 had its flaws, but it also introduced some memorable characters and explored political intrigue in a unique way. It deserves better than a C tier.
Shepard, I understand your perspective, but we can't ignore the game's shortcomings. It felt like a step backward in many aspects. The lack of innovation and recycled content weigh it down.
Dragon Age 2 failed to live up to the expectations set by its predecessor. It's a C-tier game for me, plain and simple.
I suppose I can't convince you all otherwise. I'll reluctantly agree to place Dragon Age 2 in the C tier. It had its flaws, but it still had some redeeming qualities. Star Wars, The Old Republic, a massive multiplayer online game set in the beloved Star Wars universe. It allowed players to become part of an epic story, choosing between the light and dark side of the Force. It's an A tier for me.
Shepard, I have to disagree. While it had its moments, The Old Republic felt like it lacked the depth and choice we experienced in the single-player games. It's a B tier at best for me.
The Old Republic had potential, but it failed to fully immerse me in its world. The gameplay felt repetitive, and the story didn't captivate me as much as I had hoped. B tier.
I hate to say it, but I have to side with Garrus and Rex on this. The Old Republic had its moments, but as an MMO, it didn't quite reach the same level of engagement as the single-player games. B tier for me, too.
Outweighed by the majority again, huh? I'm fine with placing The Old Republic in the B tier. It had its merits, but it didn't quite reach the same heights as the single-player games we hold dear. Mass Effect 3, the culmination of our journey. It brought the Reaper invasion to our doorstep, testing our resolve and forcing us to make the ultimate sacrifices. It's an S-tier game for me.
Shepard, I agree that Mass Effect 3 had its moments of brilliance, but I can't overlook the controversial ending. It left many fans disappointed. It's an A-tier game for me.
I'm with Garrus. Mass Effect 3 had some epic moments, but the ending left a sour taste in my mouth. I can't overlook that. B tier at best.
Mass Effect 3 had its highs and lows. The extended cut DLC addressed some concerns, but the original ending controversy still lingers. A tier is where it falls for me.
Mass Effect 3 had some of the most emotional and impactful moments in the series. The culmination of character arcs, the weight of our choices, it all mattered. It's an S tier for me, flaws and all.
I agree with it being impactful. But we have to acknowledge the disappointment that many players felt with the ending. It tarnished the overall experience. A tier is where it belongs.
Damn it, Shepard. You can't just ignore the fact that the ending left so many of us feeling empty. It's a glaring flaw that prevents it from reaching higher tiers.
Rex has a point. Mass Effect 3 had some incredible moments, but the ending controversy can't be ignored. A tier is a fair compromise.
I guess that's fair. I'll put it in the A tier then. It had its strengths, but the ending overshadowed them. Dragon Age Inquisition, a sprawling epic that offered a vast open world and compelling characters. It revitalized the series and brought a sense of grandeur. It's an A-tier game for me.
Shepard, I can't argue with you on this one. Dragon Age Inquisition was a triumph. The expansive world, the meaningful choices, and the attention to detail, it's an S-tier game, no doubt.
Finally, we have a game we can all agree on. Dragon Age Inquisition was a true gem. The scale of the world, the intricate quests, and the satisfying character development. It's an S tier for me too.
Looks like we're on the same page once again. Dragon Age Inquisition breathed new life into the series. The diverse regions, the immersive story, and the tactical combat. It's an S tier without question.
I'm glad to see our unity on this one. Dragon Age Inquisition was a remarkable experience. The rich lore, the intricate relationships, and the impact of our choices, it all contributed to a memorable journey. It rightfully earns its place in the S tier. Mass Effect Andromeda, a game that held so much promise but ultimately fell short of our expectations. It pains me to say it, but it's a D tier game for me.
Shepard, I couldn't agree more. Mass Effect Andromeda lacked the polish and depth we had come to expect from the series. It's a D tier at best.
I have to agree with you all. Mass Effect Andromeda failed to capture the magic of the original trilogy. The technical issues and the uninspired characters, it's a D tier game for me too.
Damn right. Mass Effect Andromeda was a mess. The awkward animations, the lackluster story, it didn't live up to its predecessors. D tier without a doubt.
It pains me to see a game in the Mass Effect series receive such low praise, but we can't ignore its flaws. Mass Effect Andromeda missed the mark in too many areas, D tier, unfortunately. Anthem, a game that promised to deliver a dynamic and immersive world. Unfortunately, it failed to live up to expectations. It's an F tier game for me.
Is this even a question? Anthem suffered from a lack of content, repetitive missions, and a lackluster narrative. It's an F tier, no doubt about it.
And I thought Andromeda was bad. Anthem was a disaster from start to finish. It lacked depth, purpose, and failed to engage players. Easy F tier.
I'm in complete agreement. Anthem's potential was squandered by poor execution and a lack of meaningful content. F tier.
And there you have it, our comprehensive BioWare game tier list. We've covered some incredible adventures, experienced unforgettable stories, and shared our passionate opinions.
Indeed, it's been a journey filled with highs and lows, but through it all, one thing remains constant: the immense talent and dedication of the team at BioWare.
They've given us countless hours of enjoyment, crafting rich and immersive worlds that have become dear to our hearts. BioWare's commitment to storytelling and character development is truly commendable.
They've created universes that have touched the lives of millions of players, including ours. And even in the face of criticism, BioWare continues to learn and evolve, striving to deliver unforgettable experiences.
So, to the incredible developers, writers, artists, and everyone at BioWare, we salute you. Thank you for the countless hours of adventure, the memorable characters, and the emotional journeys you've shared with us.